Okay. Hello, people who I cannot see. This is very strange without a crowd at the best, or a monitor at the least, I would say. But I am Sean. I'm a member of Informal, and this is my talk titled Time Preference, IBC, and the Era of Coordination. So Informal is like this full service R&D arm working on the interblockchain protocol along with many other great collaborators. And I've sort of been overseeing the development of the relayer specifically in Rust, and we're very excited about it. And I was supposed to do a talk about the IBC relayer in Rust, so how the implementation is going. That's not what this talk is about, because it's kind of it's short, and I don't think 20 minutes or 25 minutes is like enough to capture all the great developments that are happening on the Rust side at Informal or the IBC ecosystem in general. So I think we really need to focus in and use our time as efficiently as possible to answer sort of a single question, which I think is pretty important and I think fun to explore, which is specifically about the relayer and the incentives. So the motivating question for this talk, which be plainly stated and pleasantly explored, is who pays the relayer and what are they paying for? The reason why I think this is an important question is because it is a question about sort of sustainability of the ecosystem. If we want this thing to work and for people to run it, they have to get paid. So it's important to start thinking about what they're going to get paid for. But the problem with payment and cost, especially in sort of the era that we're in terms of the evolution of distributed state machines, is it's very early, and price doesn't really reflect value. It's just sort of mostly speculative now. It's just a bunch of great ideas. So we can't really have overly refined, informative economic models yet. And I think that's okay, because I think we could just start to navigate the time that we're in and about where we're going, and we could use sort of an analog, or I'm going to use an analog, of looking at the development of the internet to help us ask this question of who pays the relayer and what are they paying for. Okay, so this is my very scientific and very accurate chart over the spanning history of the internet. It starts with the launch of a Russian satellite, and then the Americans freaked out and formed DARPA, and they set up a bunch of infrastructure to start sharing information, because I guess the economic paradigm that defined the early age of the internet was one of scarcity of information. So from 1957 until, I don't know, I'm just putting my line in the sand, I say is 1996, sort of arbitrarily. And then things changed. And what I would argue is, well, they changed for the better in many ways, because you could see from 1996 until, I guess, today, 4.8 billion and 62% of the human race became active on the internet. I don't know if that's like the best measure, but it is informative. It doesn't really capture where those people are coming from. The development world is adopting the internet at a different rate than the developed world, for instance. But it's just sort of a baseline for like, how serious was this technology? And I guess I would argue that the internet became much more serious in the time era than in the information era. And the way that I would define these eras is by the economic paradigm that they exist in. And in the information era, there was a scarcity of information. And what I would like to argue is that in the time era, what is scarce is time. Okay, so let's talk about what that means. So there used to be an internet where people would have websites. Like for instance, I used to operate an anime website. That's how I got into tech. Maybe that's embarrassing, but that's what it is. And I really loved anime websites when I started. Actually, I still love anime websites, but they don't really exist anymore. The only way that I could find anime websites nowadays, or the ones that I liked specifically, is like through the Internet Archive. And even if I find the website I'm looking for on the Internet Archive, like the images don't work. It looks kind of busted. And I think the reason, it wasn't always busted, but the reason why it's busted today, despite it, what I would say having tremendous value, is that these kinds of websites existed in like just a completely different economic paradigm that lost, right? So now to keep this up, you have to give donations, and I guess not enough people give donations to keep images and this part of the internet alive. And I would say that this internet has gone away, and it's changed, and I would say this is what it changed too. So I personally love TikTok as a social phenomena, but I think it has relevancy here in the case of exploring changes of economic paradigms on the internet, because I think, again, most of the people who use the internet today only experience this internet. They only experience an internet that was so abundant in information that the only way to make use of it, or to make effective use of their time, was for it to be mediated by an algorithm. As in, most people use a few platforms, and most of the content that they consume is recommended to them. It's not like this old exploratory mode of the internet where, I would link to your anime website and you would link to my anime websites. Instead, there's just like a platform that decides what you consume next. And I would say one of the fascinating things about TikTok, it doesn't just say, what you consume next. It actually says it actually creates increased urgency to consume. It sort of compresses time. And I think that's what's sort of like just caused the internet and these kind of platforms to explode, is they don't just solve our problems. They actually kind of increase our time preference, and they increase it so much. So when I say time preference, it's like, how much value later would you forego for sort of like immediate gratification, right? So think about all the things that we've given up, all the anime websites that have gone away because of our increased time preference in the age of like abundant information. And I think that this sort of dichotomy is something that we could use to understand sort of the proliferation and some of the challenges that we face in defining sustainable economic paradigms for blockchain. So this is a much shorter history because blockchain hasn't been around for that long. And I guess the graph is a similar scale, but not the same significance. So I don't think we should take it that seriously. But 2008, there was this bad financial situation where people didn't trust banks anymore. And so they created Bitcoin, and the number of state machines that it took to do that were very few, I would say. So if we were to split up the history of blockchain and then define eras or periods based on the dominant scarce resource, I think that the first period of blockchain was a scarcity of trust. And then, consensus algorithms and the platforms that codified them became successful enough, sufficiently enough, that the paradigm changed. So now it isn't that we don't have blockchain. We do have blockchains, but apparently even for the few people that use them, they can't really, because there is, I guess there's a technical component of it, which is that there just isn't enough like block spaces for all the state transitions. So just like coordinating state transitions has started to dominate the productivity of blockchains and also hinder their evolution. But I think that's changing. I think there are some good solutions, but I don't think all the solutions are equally good. And I would like to talk about why. So I don't know if this is fair to pick on ETH2, because I think it's a very ambitious. I think they will succeed eventually. And there's a lot of good ideas, and those ideas are going to help a lot of people. And I think it's going to be good, but I'm not sure. Actually, I think that ETH2 has been conceived and is being executed in the wrong economic paradigm, and I'll talk about why. So if your problem is like scaling, and you just need more transactions inside of more blocks in less time, say, if that is your problem, then maybe it's a good idea to sort of coordinate a distributed, like cutting edge engineering roadmap that will span 5 years, multiple languages, multiple jurisdictions, multiple cultures, and you're going to sort of like orchestrate this with one economic paradigm in mind from the onset. So I think that it's very difficult to build blockchains in general. It's quite challenging, and to say that you're going to build like the one blockchain, like your idea, like even if you have like the best people, and they probably do have pretty phenomenal people, to say you're going to have like the one blockchain to rule them all, I don't know. I think that requires a degree of coordination, which is going to determine the success of your outcome, because I believe that we aren't in this era that is simply defined by the scarcity of time to coordinate between machines. I think that we are in the era of scarcity of time to coordinate between people. So this is why I'm excited about IBC, because it's, let's say, closer to happening, for one. It's probably going to happen in Q1. What's happening now with Stargate and all the great stuff that Tess was talking about. But I'm also excited about it because I just think it's a better idea. I think it's a better idea because it actually captures the economic paradigm of our time, which is not simply the scarcity of time to coordinate between machines, but it's about the scarcity of time to coordinate between people. So I guess this slide, right, doesn't really explain what IBC is in great detail. It's just a bunch of fancy images, but it doesn't really need to, because it captures the essence of the idea, right? And the idea is that blockchains, or there's going to be many, or state machines, in general. So ETH is there, for instance, are connected through IBC, but are otherwise sovereign. As in, they don't coordinate on technical roadmap or shared political ideologies or even a singular economic sustainability model. Actually, they need to agree on almost nothing. Well, they need to specifically agree on the implementation of IBC. But other than that, they can operate completely independently. And I think that is kind of what we need to move the technology and the impact that the technology has on people's lives forward faster, because it minimizes the coordination costs, not just between machines, but between people. But to think about the economics, we have to think about, like, how is this going to be sustainable As in, if it's a good idea, how is it going to run, not just initially, but in perpetuity? So we have to think about who's going to pay for this, and return to our original question of who pays the relayer and what are they paying for. And I think we could look at it more broadly in terms of who pays for anything on blockchain, or specifically IBC. So typically, like we already have validators on the hub, and they already get paid, and they get paid in fees. But the question is, like, what are they paid for? They are paid in this, old, and I would argue antiquated model of sort of like information or state-based or scarcity of trust. So we pay them for security because we don't trust, anyone in particular. We have a broad set of people that we pay a little to for each transaction, and we get that security. In this case, when we think about what the relayer is doing as it sits not in a single blockchain, but as we saw on the other side, sort of like between blockchains, what are the relayers paid for? And what I would argue is relayers are paid for the right to be sovereign. They allow this minimization of coordination, which allows the proliferation of communities and different use cases for blockchain. And I think that's very powerful, especially when you think about, why would you pay for sovereignty, or specifically, who would pay for sovereignty? So it could be, so if we think in the IBC paradigm, that there is, two chains and then a relayer between. And one question would be like, should it be the source who pays, like the validator? So say the validators get fees for each transactions, but maybe they don't only get the fees. Maybe some of those fees are pooled and sort of set aside for relayers, which actually I think is how this is going to work. And the reason that I think it's going to work, because it's possible that even as a source chain, you want something to happen on another chain, and for many reasons. You might want something to happen on another chain because it's too risky. It's important, but it has a risk profile that is, let's say, ungovernable within the source chain's economic model. It could be because he, wants to innovate on a consensus algorithm, or something more personal, like innovate on a business domain. And so it makes sense for those two chains to collaborate. So if there was a hub sort of at the center as a source, and then the spoke sort of like on the periphery, I think that there is an incentive to sort of push innovation and risk out to the spokes, and in some ways, there's an argument to be made that the hub should subsidize that sovereignty, because it helps contain the risk. On the other side, it's also possible that communities themselves pay for their own sovereignty, that they want to do things differently. So that it is the destination, so it is the spoke itself, which sort of skims off a part of validator fees in order to pay for foreign transactions to be relayed to it. So it kind of pays for its independence. I think those are two models, but I sense that where we're at now is the very beginning of sort of the consideration for this level of schematics, say, and it is definitely something that we'll look forward to evolving over time. Okay, so back to the original question. So what we wanted to do was ask the question, who pays the relayer and what are they paying for? And we kind of took a roundabout, it's actually not a complicated answer, but we kind of took a roundabout way to get there, because I want to talk about TikTok. But I also think that TikTok and the evolution of the internet is informative for looking at how economic paradigms shift and how they drive innovation in a way that makes everything that came before it look a little bit silly. I think that we are with the launch of IBC, we are sort of at the precipice of one of these paradigm shifts from an era in which the main economic scarcity is trust, and into an era in which what we lack is time, not to consume in TikTok sense, but to coordinate, and not just between machines, but specifically between people. And I think because of that, the relayer will get paid by everyone who cares about sovereignty. Okay, so that is exactly 20 minutes, and I haven't looked at the chat or anything, and I will take I will take a look at it now. But I also wanted to end on a question of not just so we tried to ask this question of who pays the relayer and what are they paying for, and we answered it with people pay relayers for sovereignty. So my question to the audience, which I hope that we could get some interesting answers in the next 9 minutes, is how do we make sovereignty sustainable? Okay, I'm going to take a look. Who pays the moderator? Okay. Yeah, Sunny, I anticipated that you would somehow, or sorry, I was looking forward to your disagreement. So, but if we don't have any, then that's okay as well. But yeah, I was happy to try and put a little bit of thought into the incentives for the relayer, at least to get the conversation started. See, everyone does miss anime websites. Do we have any questions? Yes, you, Sunny. Okay. Well, if we don't have any immediate questions, I would say thank you for spending some time with me talking about TikTok and anime websites. And if any questions were to come up maybe later, you can email me at sean@informal.systems. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, we're going to take a short break before we transition to the next talk. So 6 minutes, we'll see you then. Thanks for the great presentation.